This is Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network, and I am your host, Mark. And this episode of Side Projects honors the legacy of the late, great, legendary keyboardist Bernie Worrell. His friend and colleague, Evan Taylor, talks about the posthumous album he produced called Wave From The WOOniverse. It contains 12 previously unfinished Bernie Worrell compositions and one unreleased Funkadelic song. It's been a 2-year labor of love for Evan and Bernie's widow, Judie, and the amount of guests on this double album is staggering. There's Will Calhoun from Living Colour, Mike Watt, Norwood Fisher from Fishbone, Marc Ribot, Fred Schneider, Ono Lennon, Bootsy Collins, and a lot more. Evan tells me how he met and began working with Bernie initially, how they hung out at Evan's parents' house in New Jersey. He talks about his history with Bernie and how he and his record label, Loantica Records, were tapped to head this project. It wasn't always easy to get the music together, but it gave some great stories, which he shares. So grab the album wherever you get music. Follow Evan at Evan Taylor the Artist or at Loantica Records. You can also check out Bernie Worrell Official. Follow us at Performance ANX on the socials. Our stuff is at performanceanx.threadless.com and send coffee money at ko-fi.com/performanceanxiety. And now let's enter the WOOniverse with Evan Taylor on Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network.
Sorry, one moment. I'm just trying to get my earbuds all untangled so I can hear you a little bit better.
No problem, man.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Hanging in.
Good. This is your second time on the podcast, so welcome back and thank you for coming on again.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, my pleasure. So the first time you came on, we were talking about the project you were in with Sarah Safai, Purple Witch of Culver.
Mm-hmm.
You're working on a new project now, which is why I was excited to have you back on when I heard about this project, because it's really cool. It's a very different project. You don't hear about this kind of stuff happening too often. But before we get into that, I just kind of want to lay a little bit of the groundwork because, it's not just like a project like the one we're about to talk about just flops in your lap. So you did the work to get to this project. So you do a lot of production work, a lot of behind the scenes stuff. You've made some amazing music and albums with Mike Watt, with Money Mark, King Tuff, and Chapin Sisters, Jimmy Destry of Blondie. You did a country-influenced album with members of Black Flag and worked with, I believe it's every single member of Talking Heads.
Except for David Byrne.
Okay. Well, hey, not bad. But the one we're talking about now is a project that you're working on. It's music of and from Bernie Worrell. And I want to know a little bit about how you got to head up this project before we even get into the project. So how did you meet Bernie? I mean, he's the keyboardist and one of the founding members of Parliament Funkadelic. Incredibly influential guy, musically speaking. How did you meet and start working with him?
Well, I was kind of between projects, and being between projects, like after finishing an album, I think it was the Black Flag album I finished. I was just kind of racking my brain for what's something that I would be passionate about that is interesting that people might enjoy. Who do I want to work with? Who's on my bucket list? And I just, one day, it just sparked. I was like, Bernie Worrell. I would love to work with Bernie Worrell because he was also kind of a mysterious figure.
Yeah.
And that's what was so intriguing about him is, for me, the journey of even learning who he was and about his career was kind of piecemeal and from not a young age, but from when I was in high school, I kind of researched stuff, did little bits and pieces of what he's done, who he's played with, and it was a whole process of getting to know him before I got to actually know him. So I thought that he might be an intriguing person to work with. So the label I was working with, I kind of pitched it to them. And they said that they were interested in working with Bernie too. So I reached out to his manager, who's also his wife, and I said, I would like to make an album with Bernie. And she said, that's great, but that's not really an idea. And
that's fair.
So then she's like, come back to me with an idea of what you would like to do, and we'll talk about whether it's in line with what Bernie's interested in doing right now.
Okay.
And I spent some time, a few minutes, just kind of pacing, wanting to get back to her. So I was like, it would be kind of fun to do a jazz standards album, because, we wouldn't have to write a bunch of songs. We could get together and just kind of knock it out and have fun with it. And I came back to her and said that, and she said, well, we were actually toying with the idea of having Bernie do a Duke Ellington record at some point. So this is totally in line with what we were aiming to do at some point in his career.
Oh, that's awesome.
And yeah, so it was awesome. It was I was like, woohoo, nailed it. So it kind of started there, and we, discussed the particulars, and soon enough, Bernie was coming over to, at that point, I was living in LA, as I do now, and he was in New Jersey, and I'm from New Jersey, so I was crashing at my parents' house and trying to do pre-production with Bernie. So he came to my parents' house, and and seeing hanging out with my mom, and then having Bernie Worrell from Parliament Funkadelic kind of walk up and wave, it's just it's a little surreal,
Yeah. I can believe that.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a trip, but it was fun. I had a really great time with that first session, and he was just a really humble person, and we just really connected as people. It was fun, and it was great.
And that progressed, and that relationship kind of deepened as afterwards, right? I mean, you started working with him more.
Yeah. After that record, I think we did a show, and then we kind of paused for a few months, and then we put together the Bernie Worrell Orchestra, and that became a touring outfit. So, and then we released a few albums under that name. And it progressed from there, and it ended up being basically kind of 5 years of being in that institution of Bernie Worrell. So it was cool. I mean, it was fun. I was in my 20s, and I was hanging out with Bernie Worrell.
Yeah, exactly, man. That must have been just such an education.
Oh God, yeah. It was. I always say that Bernie was one of the best teachers I ever had, because he it was total Yoda stuff, it's like Mr. Miyagi shit, man. This is and before you know it, you're implementing all these ideas, but you didn't even really realize, he kind of gently put the idea out there, and then it's just he was, I don't know, he was really cool the way he communicated information and taught, and all of us kind of young guys in the band really had a growth spurt because of just his ability to communicate like that.
So how big was the band with that project? And
it started out as a 10-piece band, and then as we started going on the road more, we kind of cut back on the size of the band, because it's really touring these days is crazy, and touring even back then, however many years that was, it's really expensive. So it's kind of hard to have a 10-piece band.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Bernie passed away in 2016, and my understanding is that he was just a prolific writer. He just was writing and recording in a very, well, I don't want to repeat myself, but I guess maybe in a prolific way. And that's kind of where the project you're working on comes in. So you've got an album coming out, Waves From The WOOniverse, and it's really interesting to me because it's all work that Bernie has. I guess, was it all recorded stuff or was it written down? Or what is the project? How did it get started?
Well, basically, like how I got into the situation, Judie Worrell, his widow, had these tapes of work that Bernie had basically finished his parts. And there were some other parts there. There's some things, but sometimes it might be like his parts to a drum machine where it was intended to have a live drummer. But like there are all these bits and pieces and that were not completed. And she was trying to find a record label that would get behind it. And she called me up for a recommendation. And I said, well, I have a modest label. I would love to work on this in some capacity. And then, it kind of thought about it for a while. I thought it was the right time. It was definitely an emotional decision because it was very painful losing Bernie. Yeah. And it's something that I had to deal with for many years after and still coping with. But I accepted the job of working on the album and ended up producing a lot of it, the bulk of it. And yeah, so then I received a hard drive in the mail of digitized the tapes that were digitally transferred. And I went over it at my studio with my engineer, Spencer, and we just went through to figure out like where the gaps were, like what wasn't finished. And sometimes that might have been like a horn section that wasn't there. And then what we would do is we would call someone like Justin Mullins, who was the horn arranger for Bernie Worrell Orchestra and knew basically exactly what Bernie liked from horns. And then we had, maybe a song where we wanted some lyrics. Like there's two songs that had some really fun lyrics that were done by Jared Samuel Eliasef, who's a great lyricist and writer. And also he could co-produce those songs. And we brought in people who just specialized in all different facets of what they do, whether they're a percussionist, guitarist, bassist, whatever. I was kind of dancing around, trying to fill in the gaps with whatever I needed to play or write and produce. It kind of became this bigger and bigger thing as we started asking special guests who are part of Bernie's career to join us too.
Yeah, he's got an amazing cast of cameos. Really, it's really wild. But before we get into some of these amazing guests on here, how long was this project from beginning until the release that's coming out? How long have you been working on this?
It was a 2-year process.
Okay. How did you? I guess this is just you kind of explained it already, but I guess finishing these tracks, how did you know when they were finished? I mean, did he leave any clues behind, or were you just going off of instinct and knowledge of what he liked?
It was instinct. What I call it is basically we did forensic work on listening to his other recordings and just trying to get intel from what he laid down already and what he might want off of it. And we did a lot of digging to try to match what his taste was. So I would say that, he didn't leave any particular clues except in his playing, really.
And these are tracks from, it can span back decades. How do you know what the oldest track on here was?
I'm not particularly sure because the boxes of the reels were destroyed apparently.
Oh,
and we lost the track sheets too. So wow. Some of the stuff we don't really know where the initial stuff was recorded.
Oh my God! Was it tough to match some of the qualities? Like, if something was recorded even 10, 20 years ago, I mean, it might not sound the same as something that was recorded quality wise, especially if it's a demo track, something Bernie was working out. Was it difficult to make everything fit together?
Not particularly. I mean, we did some work ourselves trying to have some continuity with the sonics. Sometimes there might be like a keyboard that was recorded in the 90s and it was very like digital sounding. And so we had, run it through some analog stuff, get it really nice sounding and warm. And that's probably what Bernie would have been using now is going back to using analog stuff. And so we would kind of work that way, process some of the sonics. If there is a part that, like, not Bernie's parts, but if there is an instrument around his parts that needed to be recut because it was too dated sounding, for instance, we would recut that with kind of modern sonics. And what I would say is, like, by modern sonics, I mean, like, kind of like timeless sonics of, like, what would be on a 70s recording or maybe a modern recording, but just, like, not, there's a certain era where it really, like, when you hit, like, 93, it's like, it really sounds like 93.
Yeah.
Like,
so you're going back for classic sounds and getting rid of some of that dated stuff.
Yeah, of course. That was the initiative there.
There are amazing guest appearances on this, but was there a core group of players on the album that kind of go through every song, besides, of course, Bernie?
There were, a number of people. I mean, as I mentioned, Justin on horns. Let's see, who else? Tim Young on guitar. He played a lot of guitar stuff. Jared Samuel played a lot of additional keys. There is also, I'm gonna forget people, but Binky Griptite played some amazing guitar, and these are kind of like core members. Steve Scales on percussion, who also played in Talking Heads and Tom Tom Club. Davey Chedwin on percussion too, and Greg Ellis on percussion. There's a number of Scott Hogan on bass, who was from Bernie Worrell Orchestra, just had an amazing contribution to this record, and it was nice to have kind of someone I was on the road with there.
Yeah.
Like we're sharing road stories as we're recording, and it seems like Bernie's in the room with us, watching over us, making sure we're staying out of trouble.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome.
But so I mean, like, there's way more of a cast. There's Sarah Laporta on vocals, Alicia Shakur on vocals, Paul Dooley on vocals, and Anna Becker on vocals, Janet LaBelle on a number of things. She plays the role of Fred's therapist. And she also did the Bird Field recordings from the first track, and backing vocals. So it's awesome. So we had a lot of people doing a lot of different roles. Another friend, Jonathan Wald, plays a few different spoken roles, and then we have everyone doing like claps and chants and
that's great.
Yeah, so it was a team effort. It was really, really fun.
It's a double album with 13 tracks.
Yeah.
How many did you sort through to get to that 13, or did you use just about everything that was given to you?
No, there's probably a handful that we didn't release because they were good tracks, but there was just something about, first of all, like we're getting to the point where, like, triple album is like, like also like, who's going to afford a triple album?
Right. That's a little tough.
But it's a little tough these days, but we have to kind of hold off on a few that didn't really, I would say, flow as naturally with the set that we chose.
Okay.
And who knows? Those might come out like there's like as I said, I still really love those tracks. They might come out in another fashion at some point, or we might unearth some more unfinished work.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's a conversation I've had with a lot of people. Is that like Bernie recorded in so many studios over a major span of time with so many different people laying down all different ideas, and there must be more.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like
sure.
we just haven't found the next stockpile of tapes. But
it'd be like Hendrix.
Yeah, so,
like every couple of years, stuff just magically appears.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that. Actually, our engineer for a lot of this, Spencer Guerra, does a lot of those Hendrix records. Yeah,
wow.
He mixes with Eddie Kramer. He works with him. So
man.
So he worked on this album too, and had to have him. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Oh my gosh. So I want to get into some of these tracks because you've got some incredible people on these. But as we're going through them, if there's one that I guess what I want to know is if there was one that was, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this, one that was maybe difficult to get where you want it to be, or if there was one that was just almost good to go from when the first time you heard it. So if there's anything like that, just throw it out there because that's the kind of stuff I love to hear.
Yeah. My favorite ones are always the ones that are the challenge. And, just because you have the whole reward system of when you finally crack it.
Yes.
And one was Wave From The WOOniverse, which initially I had Bernie's keys with a drum machine and it was playing a different groove. So I was like, how are we going to get this to work? Should we even put this on the record? Whatever. And then I was just like, oh, this could totally be like a Tom Tom Club feel. And then I laid down some drums playing like a beat, like a then I put some Linn drum on there and then played some kind of funky bass. And then I brought that over to Jared Samuel, who added like this other layer of funk to it and wrote like this great melody. And then Sarah LaPuerta sang on it, and then she sang the lead. And then we brought Miho Hattori from Chiba Mato in to rap on it. And that was a track that literally I was not going to include.
Wow.
When I first heard it, because it just like it didn't spark until this one moment where I'm like, oh.
The shadow, so walked in, adopted in the middle of the lake in Chicago. How can I keep cold and dry? Live in the mind ice age.
Same with Soldiers of the Stars. I just felt like it. Originally, it had no vocals or anything, so it just felt like a jam. It felt like a funkadelic kind of feel. But I was like, what are we gonna do to like kind of like lift this? And it had some kind of dated drums on there and bass that we recut those with Scott Hogan, Daru Jones from he plays with Jack White, and he played drums, and Eric McFadden on guitar, and then got a really great group of singers to sing on that. And that was a really fun one to come together too, because they have like little like spoken inserts at the end that were just kind of like whoever was in the studio, like just like you do your part. And
we'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
I guess another one of the challenging ones was maybe the Big Woo, which at first it was a demo of drums and just Bernie playing one keyboard, and all instrumental, no vocals. that one, I was like, I get it. It's a cool groove. I'm feeling it, but like, this needs to be built up so much more. And, that became like Fred's song. And like, it ended up being this huge funk experience.
A solution. Make it your resolution. Lose your self-control and go wild. Be a wild sort of child. The big move. You gotta do it. You gotta say it.
Mr. Schneider.
Well, yeah.
But I would say that like songs that right away spoke to me, and I like kind of knew of what I worked on, is the songs that I didn't work on were What Have They Done to My Funk, which was Michael Moon Rubin who produced that track, and then When the Rain Subsides, that was Will Calhoun. Those tracks were done before I was involved in the project. Of the other songs, I would say Distant Star kind of right away felt like something. And that one kind of already, hit me as like just the groove was there, kind of has a like little Talking Headsy groove. And another one that I would say is that immediately had potential was probably Greenpoint. I think that Greenpoint was actually found on a session DVD that was just labeled like Bernie.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. And we opened it, and it was Bernie playing along to kind of like a hip hop groove. And I was like, wouldn't it be great if we made this feel like it was like seeing Bernie in a club? And,
Nice.
we brought in like Steven Bernstein, who is just an amazing player and just amazing artist all around. And Scott on bass, and Smokey Hormel on guitar, Mauro Fosco on percussion. And that one was mostly done at Studio G in Brooklyn with Tony Mamoni mixing. And
Nice.
so that was one of the more immediate ones where I saw a vision. It's different with everything. You have a relationship with every song, and when it's a project spanning 2 years, like it's 2 years because people aren't always available at the same time. So you have time to think about these things sometimes, or obsess about these things.
Yeah. I understand. I'm putting together an album for a charity, and
nice.
I started it in 2022, and it won't be out until spring of next year. So it's going to be a 3-year project, but it's all Spinal Tap covers.
Oh, cool.
Spinal Tap is on board with it. They love the idea, and they're going to support it. And it's coming out when their sequel comes out, which
wow,
it's been delayed.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's all mostly former podcast guests doing Spinal Tap covers.
That's amazing.
So, and we have a bunch of time again because it was supposed to come out. The movie was going to come out like late summer or early fall after a bunch of other delays. And then I just found out that it's been pushed to the spring of next year. So I've already got like 30 tracks, 30 different artists. So it's going to be, it'll be the triple album kind of thing, but it's going to be download only. So it won't be too
cool.
bad, but.
That sounds incredible.
Oh, it's an amazing, super crazy project, but I can understand what you're saying, when you're saying it's a 2-year project where you just sit there and obsess about things, especially when nothing's moving forward.
Yeah, there is. That's the thing, like, you reach that standstill sometimes when you're just like, when is this going to all lock in and come together? I remember I was getting off the tour and I was like walking through an airport and it was like the most hectic time. And I was like, I had no energy and I was like, okay, now I have to go back to studio life and finishing this album. How the heck am I going to do this?
Right.
It's just like, I was just like, how is this ever going to come together? But I did it in like, we had like, Judie Worrell was definitely great at keeping things on track and being a motivating force for, making sure that we were doing what we need to do.
Good project manager.
Yeah. Excellent project manager. Yeah.
Well, I've been listening to it a lot and it's really wild. I mean, and I'm going to start off with the epic track because it's just crazy. Transcendence. That is amazing. It starts off sounding like a Bach piece.
Yes.
But then it just goes total, just funky and it's just wild. And it's got Marc Ribot and Norwood Fisher. It's an insane combination. But it's so good. On a song like that, I'm not, I'm not involved in the project, so I don't know. How do you know when a track that epic, that long, and that involved? How do you know when it's done, when it's finished?
You just know. I mean, like, it's funny because that was a track that actually I almost didn't include. I was just like, okay, it's a good feel. Like there were parts of it that were like rhythm section parts that were recut, and apparently it came and I called Judie Worrell and I asked her. I asked her a question about I don't even remember about the thing, and she said that like she did have the box for the reel tape, and it just said has potential. And
wow.
And so really, like, it started off as like kind of recutting certain things to be a little more timeless and modern at the same time. Brought in this really great drummer, Adam Bradley Schreiber, who laid down this like really cool groove, and we started kind of building from there. And by the time we had the new groove, we had like Bernie's parts, the groove, and then I think that we brought in Norwood. And Norwood came in at 9 a.m. and he just knocked it out of the park, And Norwood is so great because he's so chill about it, and just like like it'll just get done. You don't have to worry about it with Norwood. It's just like it's gonna happen, and it did. And you don't have to studio police him at all. He's gonna get it done, and he's gonna be mellow about it, and it's great. And then I think we kept building And then there's kind of a section at the end where it just had potential to move further. And I brought in Greg Ellis, who he's a percussionist and he does a lot of film scores. So he's done some of the Matrix movies and Iron Man, and the list goes on. So he's like really dialed into that cinematic percussion. So for like the second half of the song, where just like all this percussion kind of comes in, it was him providing that. Then we had like a really good foundation, and I was like, I would really love to have Marc Ribot on this. Like that would just, and he played with Bernie too, like they played together. So I was like, I just feel like, that would make this track, having him and Norwood as the featured artist would be like such a cool collaboration.
Oh yeah.
Marc said yes. And we met in Brooklyn, and he came in. I don't think he even listened through to the track. We pushed record, and he was doing stuff. He took like his house keys and made like sounds on the strings. He was doing all sorts of cool out stuff. And, and then he did like 2 passes, and the engineer's like, how do you feel about it? And he's like, I feel good. And everyone in the room was like, we feel great about what just happened. It's just a dilemma of like, which brilliant pass do we choose?
Oh man.
And it was so cool. And, he was such a pleasure to work with. And then like, when we heard the song back, it's really also what, Spencer Guerra, the mixer for that track, he said like, he really loved, also Justin Mullins did a great horn arrangement for that, but he really loved the interplay between Marc and Bernie and Norwood, and working with that in the mix. He said that he really had like a great time working with that. And I feel like that's a track that's like great to listen to headphones, just trance out. It's a track I do get asked about a lot, and it's
the epic on the album.
Yeah, it really turned out to be an epic track. It's true, yeah.
There's a couple that okay, so obviously, we talked about a little bit about the Big Woo. Anything with Fred Schneider just grabs my attention. That dude is just incredible. I love that guy's voice. But When the Rain Subsides is one of my favorites with Will Calhoun. To me, it actually sounds like an early Living Colour song, like something off of Vivid or Time's Up. It really sounds like it could be one of their songs.
Yeah, completely. And the way the drums are mixed on that, or just the whole, it has like, it really has because Bernie and Will played a lot, and it really has the sound of them playing together. It's really so cool because it's like Will, like you can feel Will's energy and his sound. And, Will was just very dear to Bernie, and it was so special to have him on this project and to produce a song for us. It was just very special. And it does have that Living Colour feel. It really does. And, I love Living Colour and the epic band.
Oh, yeah. They're one of my favorites. They're amazing live. So it's...
Oh, yeah. They're great.
I absolutely love them. But one of the songs that I love, and I haven't listened to too much of what the guest on this has done, and it now makes me want to go back and listen, is Re-Enter Blacklight Phase 3 with Sean Ono Lennon. That song is amazing. I absolutely love what Sean did on that. It's just fantastic, and makes me want to go back and listen to everything else he's done. I know he's done a ton of stuff with like Les Claypool and a bunch of other artists, and now I'm like, all right, I'm going to have to go back and check this stuff out.
Yeah, I mean, Sean, has been like one of my favorite musicians for so long, and he's so versatile. And the thing is, when I heard that song, I was like, the thing that's missing from it is a really, really funky bass line, but it needs like a Sean Ono Lennon bass line, because he used to actually play bass for Chiba Mato.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so like if you should like YouTube it, look it up. Like he's so funky, and he really did like so much for that track. And there's like, I mean, I could get like all nerdy about it and stuff like that, but like there's like this one thing he did where he like changed the harmonic nature of it, and then like suddenly there was like a verse and the chorus. He did like, I don't know, he did some like crazy stuff that I just did not expect. And when I heard the final version of the tracks that he laid down, I was just like, wow, we have something really, really special here. This Sean track, but that's a track that I had a lot of fun with, because I played a lot on that track.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm glad it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, so
that worked out well.
I had to get on the Sean track.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, Sean put out a solo album recently that's all instrumental, and it's I've forgotten the name of it, but definitely look it up and check it out, because I think Mauro Rufosco, who's also on this record, is on that record, and it's just like, it really, like, you hear his guitar chops, and it's really cool. It's just I don't know, I can go down the Sean rabbit hole, but yeah, it was a pleasure to have him on this record, and I know that Bernie would have been really happy that he was involved.
And speaking of awesome bass, you have Pedro Wu with Mike Watt.
Yes,
of course, it's got to be Pedro.
Yeah, yeah. When we were coming up with titles, I was like, I don't know, like I just feel like a Watt track has to be Pedro something. Yeah. Like so Pedro Wu. Yeah, like we worked with Watt when Bernie was alive, and they really got along well, and I know that Bernie was really dear to Watt, and the other way around too, and it was just really special to have a Watt track and have Watt involved, and he always does something that's unexpected, which is cool, because I kind of gave him this track and it's like, okay, lay down the part. I was like, do you want to come to the studio? And he's like, no, I'm going to do it from home. I have a lot of stuff going on. And I was like, okay, cool. So I'll just hear what you come up with. and I listened to it, and I was just like, wow, this is completely different than what I imagined it would be. But it's really, really effing cool.
It is.
And I was just like, okay, that's Watt. He always figures out some direction that you're not expecting, and it's great. It's amazing.
And then you have members of the Talking Heads, like Jerry Harrison on Distant Star, which it's really cool, because you go from the intro, which very sparse and spacey, and a lot of space in the song, to Distant Star, which is a lot denser of a song, and it's really cool to go in from one to the other, and to have Jerry Harrison on that, I thought that was really great.
Yeah, it was great. I worked on that song with Jared Samuel, and Jared and Paul Dooley worked on the lyrics and melodies, and got some really great vocals. So we had like a song going that was great, and I really wanted Jerry to solo, because I feel like Jerry has a certain way that he soloed that like Bernie really respected. And even though they were completely different players, in Talking Heads, they just had their own thing going on. So we tried to coordinate so many times to make this happen, and it was so hard to, like, we were working with different software, we were trying to fly tracks around, whatever. Then I was in New York, and then Talking Heads were supposed to appear on Colbert, and then Colbert got COVID. And then, so Jerry's from San Francisco. He's living in San Francisco right now. So he was kind of like, just in town waiting, didn't, like, just trying to kill time. I was like, how about you come to the studio now and let's just cut it while we're all together rather than like doing remote tracks and stuff like that. And we had, some keyboards set up for him, and he just killed it. And
that's awesome.
It was so cool. He just came in and killed it, and we hung out for a while. He was playing us some tracks that some of his solo tracks that Bernie played on that I hadn't heard before. And it was cool. It was a great hang. Yeah, it was really great to work with him.
So one of the really interesting things about this album is there's a Funkadelic song on here, Contusion. How did that go? Was that part of the hard drive that came over, or was that something that was different?
That was different. That was kind of gifted to us by Westbound Records, I believe. And they thought it would be cool to, since the record was coming out, it came out a day after Bernie's birthday. So it was a big celebration of Bernie. I think he would have been like 80 or something. And they had this track that was written by Bernie and Billy Bass Nelson. And it really featured, as you heard, features Bernie on the organ just going crazy.
Yes.
And we're like, and when I heard that they were going to let us use this track, I was just like over the moon. I was like, I had never, like when I got it, when it was emailed to me, I was like, wow, I am in possession of this song that very few people have heard. Oh my God. Like, yeah,
that's amazing.
It was a good track. It was cool. Yeah.
That is so cool. Oh man. Isn't really something that you can put together a group and tour to support. So is it going to be, is it basically just getting on podcasts and spreading word of mouth and, just trying to get to Bernie's fans to get awareness of the album out?
Yeah. Well, basically, I'm trying to tell the story of the record because I feel like it's a lot to digest. Really, there's a lot that went on for this to happen. And I think that it requires a conversation to really understand. So that's kind of how it's been so far, is word of mouth and blogs, podcasts, just forums, and some social media too. And that's how it will remain right now. It's just kind of letting it build. I feel it's that kind of record. It's not like a Taylor Swift record. No offense to Taylor Swift, but it's not like that kind of record. It's just, it will build steam as it continues to just grow and reach people's ears.
Yeah, it's gonna have that snowball effect.
Yeah, exactly.
And it deserves to, because there's so much good stuff on this album. I honestly didn't know what to expect when I first started listening to it, but it wasn't, kind of like you said, it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. And it's so much better. And I think that's partially because of the love and the respect that you had for Bernie, and also the people that you brought in who feel the same way and want to honor his legacy and his music.
Yeah.
What is the best way for people to find the album, pick it up and listen to it and enjoy it like I've been able to?
Well, it's all on all streaming platforms if you stream music. I know there's some vinyl copies kind of going around the circuit, but I'm not really sure of future pressings right now. But that's to be determined.
So the vinyl that's out there could be very collectible.
It will be very collectible, and it is coming out on CD. But yeah, hopefully people can enjoy it through whatever process. I'm more of a vinyl person. Well, I'm both. Like I'm a vinyl person, but I love the convenience of streaming when I'm driving my car.
Yeah.
So so it's.
I know exactly what you mean. I am a big CD guy, but my car doesn't even have a CD player in it anymore.
Yeah, I was a big CD guy too, and I don't have a CD player either anymore. But I used to not to go on a tangent, but I used to have these huge booklets of CDs, and I'd bring them on tour, and everyone was just like, "Oh, Evan's booklets are around. They're always taking up space," and I'm just like, "I'm sorry, I'm a CD guy."
Here, I'll show you there's my wall of CDs right now.
Oh, wow. Oh, that is gorgeous.
That's most. I got a small pile there on the floor that I'm still trying to sort through. And then, there's a few over there. So I still collect CDs, even though I don't really have very many places to listen to them. If I don't have the physical product, I feel like I haven't actually bought it, unfortunately. Yeah. But what is the best way for people to follow you, keep up with your projects, so they can get news ahead of time on things like this, or any of the other bands or projects that you're working on?
Basically, Instagram, Evan Taylor, the artist. Check it out. That's really where I update people on what's going on. If you want Bernie information, Bernie Worrell Official. I mean, I have a website, but it's not really I don't update it that much, but it exists.
You don't have time.
Yeah. So basically, Instagram is a good place, and also my record label, Loanica Records. That's spelled Loantaka Records. We do updates on little things that we release and cool little promos and stuff like that. So yeah.
Well, before we wrap up here, is there anything that I missed that you want to get across about the Bernie Worrell tribute? Is it a tribute album, or is it more? What would you consider it?
It's like a posthumous album,
like the Hendrix stuff.
Yeah, like the Hendrix stuff.
Awesome. Well, man, thank you so much for spending some time and talking about this album, because it really sucked me in, and I really enjoyed listening to it. Really found some new players, new people that I'm going to go explore now from some other work that they've done. So thank you for that, and thank you for sharing this album and some of the previously unreleased work of Bernie's. It's brilliant.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time to check out the record and speak with me about it. It means a lot.
Child of Mother Nature, you see the frequency of every bird and every tree.